Hello everyone, welcome to this session of my NPTEL course Appreciating Linguistics or Typological Approach. If you can recall, in the previous session we were talking about certain generalizations in morphological typology, and they were related to the verb patterns, morphological affixes, then also we were talking about syncretism. Just to refresh what we discussed, the first generalization or Gen 1 was all about the category or the nature of the verbs and its argument structure. And it reads something like this: if in a language intransitive verbs incorporate their single argument, the transitive verbs incorporate their patient arguments. And we have already discussed how intransitive verbs are different from transitive ones and how this generalization works. Then the second or Gen 2 was the incorporation of agents of intransitive verbs is almost non-existent, because in the transitive verbs the agents are already there. So, it is almost impossible to incorporate one more agent in most of the languages. That is why it is said it is almost non-existent. Then the third generalization was about if a language has inflection, it also has derivation. So, that means if you could recall, inflectional affixes are like tree, trees, book, books. So, the S morpheme is the inflectional affix, and derivational would be book, let us say book and booking. Booking as a noun, when it is derived from book as a verb, then it will be a derivational affix. So, the generalization is that Greenberg 1966, this is if it has inflection, it will also have derivation. Then taking this inflectional and derivational affixes further, the next generalization talks about derivational and inflectional affixes do not have jointly cumulative exponents. So, you cannot have one particular morpheme which will have both the features with a verb like, let us say for example, speak. And person and numbers, these are generally signaled by the cumulative affixes, and the tense form is generally signaled by the separatist affixes, and I have given you the example of Greek and Latin. Then we did talk about syncretism, gender syncretism and case syncretism. In gender syncretism, it is more frequent in plural than the singular. So, that means in singular you will always find the gender differences more clearly visible. In case of the plural you may not. Then finally, the case syncretism, it frequently involves two major cases or two core cases which are nominative and accusative. So, with this information we will move further to the next set of generalizations. So, the next this is not the only reduplications or the only set of reduplications available in morphological typology. There are more into it, and we are going to discuss the next set. But before that, I would like to talk about another morphological phenomenon which are a very common which is a very common feature in South Asian languages, or SALs as we say it, and that is reduplication. Because when you see the next set of generalizations or the morphological typological generalizations, you will see it is primarily based on reduplication. So, reduplication, those who do not know anything about it, it's an interesting linguistic phenomenon where the morphological pattern whereby the base or some portion of it is duplicated, right. So, I have given you some examples of Hindi here, Hindi Urdu. So, what is it? The concern here is that we need to understand how reduplication works in a language like Hindi. Why I chose Hindi? There are more examples if you refer to the data given in Moravcik's book, Introduction to Language and Linguistics, published by Cambridge University Press. There are data from Ewe language, Latin, Mandarin, and Bicol. So, maybe I will just quickly write the languages which would be discussed by Moravcik. But before that, I will just give you an idea, keeping in mind that most of us are speakers of South Asian languages. Let us have a look at it, how reduplication works in a language like Hindi Urdu, which is an Indo-Aryan language. So, as I read the definition, The morphological, so what is reduplication? That is what you need to ask yourself. So, reduplication means it is repetition of a particular stem or a part of it or a portion of it. So, formal definition is something like this, let me read it out. The morphological pattern whereby the base or some portion of it, either the base or the portion of it is duplicated is called reduplication. And this is generally considered as a universal feature. That means almost all of the languages in the world, they do have reduplication. However, if it is not true for some of the languages, remember I used the term almost, not all. So, we are not sure about it. But as far as the studies have been concerned, most of the world's languages, they have reduplications. That is why it is considered to be a universal feature. But at least if it is not true for all the languages, a couple of generalizations can be drawn keeping in mind the reduplication in world's languages. Okay. So, now let us look at this and let us see what are the different types of reduplications that we might have in our languages, and you need to think about it how it works in your language, and I will give you some example from Hindi Urdu, which is a South Asian Indo-Aryan language. In Hindi Urdu, you primarily see two kinds of generalization, sorry, two kinds of reduplication. One is partial reduplication and then it is called complete reduplication. Partial reduplication, that is also known as echo words, and complete reduplication is also sometimes called as full reduplication. So, complete or full, the other one is partial or echo words. So, I have given some data here, look at the computer screen. It is written jana vana means going, etc. So, you see jana vana, so it is the first phoneme j has been changed with va in the second word. So, this is called partial reduplication or the echo word, which means going, etc. Similarly, bhagam bhag. So, when you say bhagam bhag, bhagam, like bhag is the primary word and it has been repeated. So, in this case this is a noun, and jana vana is generally considered as you can call it a gerund or a verb or whatever, right. But bhagam bhag is surely a noun here. So, this is the example of partial reduplication or echo words. And then the other side of the table or other side of the data set, we have complete or full reduplication. When you say garam garam, garam garam means hot hot. So, it is something like I want to eat hot food. So, then you can say mujhe garam garam khana chahiye. So, in that case garam garam, garam is the stem which has been repeated wholly or which has been repeated fully. So, that is why it will be complete reduplication or full reduplication. Then we have jate jate, which is a verb. So, jate jate would be going going. So, that is also a reduplication of the verb go. So, these are some examples of partial versus full reduplications in Hindi Urdu. If you check Morabzek's book, you will find out quite a few examples have been given from other languages. There is for example, there is one language like Ewe, where asi is a word which means hand. So, this hand, I am just writing it here. So, this means hand, and when it is reduplicated, you can call it asi asi. So, that means hand by hand. So, this is also an example of reduplication in Ewe. There is another language or another set of data that is given from Latin. So, in Latin there is a word quis, which means who, and when it is reduplicated, you can say quis quis. So, quis quis is, that means whoever, right. So, quis quis is whoever. So, that is also another full reduplication. Then we have a language like, let us say, Mandarin. This language also has reduplication in their linguistic system. We have yang, which means, let us say, sheet, right, and then when it is reduplicated, you call it yang, which means every sheet. Okay. Then finally, we have a language like Bicol, again the data from Moravsik. Let us say we have Gapo. I am sorry, my apologies if I don't, if my pronunciation is weird. I am just trying to explain it to my participants. So, which means, so Gapo, which means stone, is reduplicated as Gapo Gapo. Okay. So, Gapo Gapo means small stones. Okay. So, these are all examples of reduplications in various languages of the world. So, here in this box we have SAL example, and in this box we have examples or data from the other languages of the world. So, with this information about reduplication, where either the whole base or some portion of it is duplicated, we call it reduplication. When it is wholly reduplicated, we call it complete or full reduplication. When it is partially duplicated, we call it echo words or partial reduplication. So, with this information, let us move to the next set of generalizations that we have in hand. So, what does the generalization 8 tells us? Like, what does it tell? It tells if a language has partial reduplication, it also has total reduplication. So, how it is different from the previous statement that I made a while ago? I just said universal, like reduplication is a universal phenomenon, because most of the world, almost all languages in the world, they have this feature or they have this phenomenon. However, since we do not know all the languages in the world, if in case there are some languages which do not have reduplication, at least these set of generalizations are going to work. This set of generalizations are going to be considered universal. What is it? That means, if a language has partial reduplication, it must have full or complete or total reduplication. That means, so what is the basic, what is the bare minimum feature? The bare minimum feature is partial reduplication. The other way around may not work, but at least if the partial one is there, the full will definitely be there. However, in some cases the total and partial reduplications are indistinguishable. For example, a language like Marshallese, this is again the data from Moravsik's book. That means, so this is, I am drawing another box here for you to understand. So, this is a language Marshallese. In this language what happens, it is not very clear sometimes whether this is partial or full reduplication. So, I will write two examples here. One is wa, it means cano, okay. And when it is reduplicated, you see waha, that means go by cano, right. So, this is an instance, it seems to be a full reduplication. However, in the other example, like let us say this is the data kagir, kagir would be belt. And when you write, or this particular language had like has a word like kagir gir, that means wear, let us say a belt. So, in such cases, look at the example number 2 here, kagir and kagir gir. So, that means it is a partial reduplication, but sometimes it may not, you kind of, you may not find it very easy to identify exactly which one has been reduplicated, and the problem occurs in a word like thakin. So, thakin here, that means socks, and when it is reduplicated, we have thakin So, it is something like this. It is tack, in, then kin. So, this would be where sounds, right. So, here it is a little tricky to identify which one has actually been reduplicated. So, tack, in, kin. So, there are 3 morphemes you see over here. Unlike the previous ones, when wa becomes waha waha, which is complete reduplication, kagir means kagirgir, partial reduplication, but in case of tack-in, so tack-in is also getting split. So, it is in some languages you would find the partial reduplication and the total reduplication, it is a bit indistinguishable. However, the generalization that holds true is if a language has partial reduplication, it must have total reduplication also. Okay. So, that is the 8th generalization that we discussed. And then we have the 9th generalization, which talks about duplification. Duplification is again, that is a phonological conditioning. So, when you say that means when you are talking about the duplification or the reduplication or the repetition of a particular phoneme. So, in that case you are going to call it duplification. So, what does the generalization 9 talks about? It talks about the frequent forms of duplifixation or the duplifixes are a consonant, a syllable or 2 syllables. That means the vowels are generally out of the duplification. So, what does get duplified? It is primarily a consonant or a syllable or 2 syllables, but very unlikely you would see a particular vowel getting duplified. So, what is this? How does it work? In what sense do we see the duplification of consonants? So, it depends on the position. In which position does the consonant stay? So, in that case, when a particular syllable gets duplified, or when a particular consonant gets duplified, and when 2 syllables are getting duplified, these are more frequent than any other vowel duplification. So, it depends on the position of the consonant, and accordingly the generalization 9 falls into place. Okay. So, which one is this one is a statistical universal. You are not going to call it an absolute universal, rather it depends on which one is more frequent and which one is less frequent. So, when it is a consonant, it is more frequently duplified, a syllable more frequently duplified, or 2 syllables together, that also more frequently duplified, but definitely not the vowels. Okay. So, that is the 9th generalization that we have in hand. Next we are moving to the 10th one. The 10th generalization talks about duplifixes are in most cases strictly ordered relative to the base. Okay. Now, what does the second sentence read? The second sentence reads, they may be prefixed, suffixed or infixed, but in each case they are adjacent to the portion of the base that they duplicate, right. So, it reads very long, but then it is actually a very simple one. So, when does duplifix occur, okay, or when do we see duplification in its most frequent forms? So, in most of the cases they are ordered relative to the base. So, if it is teacher, what is the let us say I am not going to go into the duplification first. Let me tell you what is the adjacency of a base. So, when you say teacher, er is the morpheme, it is next to the base, that is teach. And what is it? It is a suffixation here, because teach is the base and er is the morpheme which has been attached to it. So, this is adjacent to the portion of the base that. So, in case of duplifixes, what happens? Whether it is a prefix or a suffix or let us say infix, in any of the cases it would be attached to the base. Okay. So, I will give you an example for the duplification here from Tagalog. Tagalog, again the data comes from Strater and Odense, but then I got the data from Moravcsik 2012. So, I think it is 2012, yeah. So, let us see, let us look at the duplication and how it works in a language like Tagalog. So, here I will draw a small table. So, here is a language, that is Tagalog. In this language what happens? There is a verb called Wingyan. This is, let us say this is a verb, and when it is reduplicated it becomes be Bingyan, but it cannot be Bingyan Yan. Okay? Okay, let me write it in a more clearer manner. Maybe I will start from here. So, here is Tagalog. So, here is a word Bingyan, and when it is reduplicated it becomes be Bingyan, but definitely not Bingyan Yan. Alright. So, why this one is wrong, but this one is right when it is reduplicated. So, what did we study, or what did we get to know about let us say reduplications or duplication, and what let us read the generalization again. What is the first sentence saying? The first sentence is saying duplifixes are in most cases strictly ordered relative to the base. So, what is the base here? The base here is Bing. If you look at this data, so the base is Bing and Yan is the extension of it. It could be, I am not very sure considering I am not a speaker of this language, but going by the generalization here, the reduplication B, which is adjacent to the base Bing, is okay. But when you say Bing Yan Yan, so that like the reduplication of Yan cannot be considered as the right form of duplication of this consonant or of this syllable. So, B Bing Yan is okay, but Bing Yan Yan is not going to be okay. So, going by this example, the 10th generalization actually can clearly be understood if you look at this. Also, we can give you another example. Let us say from the same language, let us say this is the word, then this is pa, then this is pa bili, and when it is reduplified or when it is duplified in that sense, this will be ma e pa b b li, alright. So, pa bili and becomes like it is my pa pa bili, this is my pa b bili. So, this pa has changed into b, and you see that whenever this duplification is happening, it is primarily related to the base form my. So, it has to be adjacent to the base, clear. So, these are just some examples from languages like Tagalog. However, in most cases the duplifix is adjacent to the part of the base that is reduplicated. So, what is the and what is it reduplicated in this case? So, the pa and b. So, bili, it has to be adjacent to bili, which is why the pa bili and pa bili in first case pa pa bili and in the second case pa bibili. So, the idea here is that when it is related to the either it is prefixation or suffixation or infixation, in all of the cases it is only the affix which is adjacent to the portion of the base that can be reduplicated, not the other ones. Okay. Now, how about the next generalization, which is generalization 11. So, in 11 you see partial reduplication is generally numerically restricted, and it mostly involves simple doubling. You don't see many instances of partial reduplication in the world's languages, rather full reduplication is more common. So, what does it say? What does Gen 11 saying? It is saying, or it says it is generally numerically restricted. You will find fewer number of partial reduplication, and it mostly involves simple doubling. So, when you are talking about the doubling or the duplifying of things, it generally simply doubles. So, like jana vana, for example, in Hindi, the Hindi example that we have given, khana vana, jana vana, apples, apples. So, in that case, so it is primarily the simple doubling happens in most of the partial reduplications, and completely different word as a form of reduplication is not numerically as frequent as the full reduplication. So, just remember, to make it simpler for you, partial reduplication is less frequent and complete reduplication is more frequent in most of the world's languages. Okay. Now, let us move to the next reduplication, so in the next generalization. So, generalization 12 tells us that cross-linguistically most common meaning, let me read it first. Most common meaning of reduplication is the quantitative or qualitative augmentation of the meaning of the base. Its second most common meaning is diminutive of size, so like it is diminution of size or intensity. Okay. It is a little tricky to understand what this particular generalization talks about. I will spend some time to explain this to you, but before that let me read it again. So, considering this is a longer one, let us see how it works. The first thing, cross-linguistically, which means in most of the world's languages, most common meaning of reduplication is quantitative or qualitative augmentation of the meaning of the base. So, generally it is the meaning is related to the base, and that is how reduplication works. Very unlikely you will find a reduplicated word which does not have any connection with the base. So, either it is quantitative repetition or qualitative repetition, or as it is written in the generalization 12, it is quantitative augmentation or qualitative augmentation of the meaning of the base. So, the base is important for us in case of reduplication. And what is the second most common meaning is the diminution of the size or intensity. Either you are talking about the size of the particular base or the intensity of the particular base, but eventually it boils down to the meaning of the base. Okay. So, how does it work? Let me just give you an idea. The wide, like when we are thinking about, or when we are trying to understand the semantics of reduplication, in a wide variety of meanings that where the reduplication is used, it's related to the meaning of the root word. Or for example, when I say jana vana, so the root word or the base is jana and the partial reduplication is vana. But when you are trying to understand what is the semantics or what is the meaning here is to go. It cannot be different from go, because it's controlled by the semantics of the base. Considering the base is jana in Hindi and it means go, so when it is partially reduplicated, when it is jana vana, it can never be anything other than jana. It has to be related to the base. So, either it is the qualitative augmentation or it is the quantitative augmentation, but eventually it is the meaning of the base that decides how the reduplication is going to work, or the meaning of the reduplication can never be far away from the meaning of the base. And sometimes it is qualitative augmentation, sometimes it is quantitative augmentation, but eventually what is the most common meaning? It is the diminution of the size or the intensity. Either you are talking about the intensity of the phrase or you are talking about the size of the phrase. But whatever might be, whether it is size or the intensity or the quantity or the quality, irrespective of whatever you are talking about, the basic semantics or the basic meaning of the verb, that gets retained. So, that is how we need to understand the generalizations related to the reduplication, which is one of the most significant linguistic phenomenon in most of the world's languages. After this, we will move to the next set of generalizations, which are about the zero overt versus zero affixes.